All right, let's now shift our attention to what the Israeli Prime Minister has had to say about the JCPOA. Now, there is an emerging deal over Iran's nuclear program, and the Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has said that the US-Iranian deal that is taking shape is now weaker than the original agreement that was signed way back in the year 2015. Naftali Bennett has also underlined his concerns that this potential deal that could be struck between Iran and 6 world powers led by the United States could actually make Middle East a lot more volatile. Now, remember, the world powers have been negotiating with Iran in Vienna. The United States is taking part in these negotiations indirectly through its European allies. And this is being done in order to revive the 2015 nuclear deal, otherwise known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And this was a deal that was violated by the Americans in the year 2018, when the then American President Donald Trump had decided to unilaterally walk out of the deal. The JCPOA had limited Iran's enrichment of uranium. It had tried to make it harder for Tehran to develop material, the fissile material that is needed for a nuclear program. However, the former American President Donald Trump had withdrawn from the deal in 2018, describing it as the worst negotiated deal in American history. Now, what is interesting is that the State of Israel has been a very staunch opponent of the JCPOA. It has urged the United States to take a much more of a hard line than it has already taken against Iran in the current round of talks. Now, in its speech to the Jewish American leaders, the Israeli Prime Minister warned that Iran has in fact used the interim period to march ahead with the enrichment of the uranium fissile material to levels that would be described as approaching weapons grade. Now, since the original timeline may not be extended, Bennett has also noted that the 10-year limit on enrichment and other key aspects in the original deal are set to expire in 2025. This is just 2.5 years from now. And this leaves Iran with a fast track to possible military-grade enrichment of uranium.
The single biggest problem with this current agreement is that the freeze sunsets in 2.5 years. 2.5 years, which is right around the corner. In 2.5 years, Iran, by this agreement, will be able to freely develop, install, and operate advanced centrifuges. For Israel and all the stability-seeking forces in the Middle East, the emerging deal, as it seems, is highly likely to create a more violent, more volatile Middle East.
Bennett, meanwhile, has repeated his pledge that the State of Israel will not allow Iran to become a threshold state, insisting that the State of Israel will not be bound by any new deal that the Americans would want to strike with the Iranians.
So yes, there are challenges, but we're up to them. Let me be clear. Israel will not accept Iran as a nuclear threshold state. We have a clear and unnegotiable red line. Israel will always maintain its freedom of action to defend itself.
Now, what is interesting in all of these statements is that the State of Israel considers Iran to be its enemy. It has anxiously kept a watch on the current round of talks. In fact, the State of Israel did not want these negotiations to even begin in the first place. But now that the negotiations are underway, the State of Israel is demanding that there should be a much more difficult deal for Iran. Tighter restrictions on its nuclear program need to be imposed. The State of Israel also wants the deal to address Iran's long-range missile program and also its support for hostile proxies along Israeli borders like the Lebanese militant Hezbollah group. The State of Israel has also insisted that negotiations must be accompanied by credible military threat for Iran. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.